frankly speaking, a biblical perspective. I am your host, Pastor Frank E. Leggett III. And I thank you for being here on this most historic night. I believe that this is without a doubt the most historic election, certainly in our lifetime, if not in the history of this country. It is 8, it's a little after 8 p.m. here in the East. The polls are closed. Your votes are in. You've made your selection. And now the process and the countdown has begun to select the next president of the United States of America. And so I thank all of you for voting, doing what is most American, and that is exercising your right to vote. I want to share with you, just to get started, a clip. I believe it's the most important clip. It is a clip from one of the most brilliant minds alive today, and I'm referencing Noam Chomsky, and a brilliant intellectual. He had these poignant words to say about a political party in existence today. I want you to hear this clip. Take a look.
I mean, you called the Republican Party the most dangerous organization on earth.
In human history. There has never, it's an outrageous statement, and when I said it, I said, look, this is a very outrageous statement, but is it true?
But you're rating them worse than the Kim Jong-un of North Korea or ISIS, who are very...
Is ISIS dedicated to trying to destroy the prospects for organized human existence?
Wow. He said the Republican Party is the most dangerous in history. Now, I would disagree with that just a little bit. I have, because I believe there is a union. There is a union. I believe that Scripture even references that union. All right, and right now I want to transition to what I believe is one of the most important and one of the most relevant texts in all of Scripture. And that is Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. Here's the King James Version. It says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." Now, here's what I want. Here's what I'd like everyone to know, and that is this. Anytime you translate from one language to another, you lose something in translation, because a word in one language may not have the equivalent in the language that you're translating it into. The nuance may be different. The intensity may be different. We're grateful for the translators of the King James Version, but I believe that when it comes to this verse and the significance of this verse, I think that there is some things that you need to hear and know about this particular verse. And I can't do it in English because we're going to lose some things. And so what I want to do is I want to take you to the original Greek text. It's Revelation 13, verse 11. And here's what I want to share with you in Greek. Here's what the text says. It says, Kai Idon. John says, and I saw. And then he says, allo therion, allo. It is an adjective describing that noun, therion, which is beast. He said, I saw another beast, which, why is he, it's another, allo means another of the same kind. He saw a beast in verses 1 through 10. That was a destroying beast, a tyrannical beast, a dictatorial beast. John says, I saw another beast of the very same kind. And this time, instead of it being coming up out of the sea, this one came out of the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that John is seeing the rise of the United States of America in prophecy. When you look at the rest of this passage from verses 11 down through 18, it cannot refer to China. It cannot refer to Russia, because those verses refers to a superpower that will require and mandate and force mankind all over the globe to worship in a certain way. We know that those communist countries are not going to do that according to this passage. We're going to continue the text. And then John says, and John literally is seeing this stuff in the heavens. God is showing it to him, and he's viewing it. Understand that God is showing him a vision. He's seeing things portrayed in the heavens. He's seeing the history acted out right before his eyes. He says, anabainon, active, it's a participle. He said, I saw this power. I saw this political power. I saw this country literally rising up in power. It hadn't already arrived as a superpower, but it was rising up in its infancy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is taking place about the year 1798 in the United States of America. You know that this country went to war to fight against the superpower, Great Britain, in 1776. And so we're only about 22 years old. We're still, as a country, we're still going through our terrible twos. We're still riding our tricycles. We haven't arrived as a nation. But what he is seeing is a nation arising in power, in influence, in wealth as time passes. And then he says, he sees it rising up out of the earth. It is not as, this nation is not as heavily populated, even though Native Americans were here before Columbus ever stumbled onto this. All right, America was populated. He says, I saw it rising up out of the earth. And so it's a growing nation. And then he says, he said, Kai Eken, it had Kerata, it had horns. How many? Duo, it had two. Hamoya, Arneo, like a lamb. Now, the key word here, one of the key words in this passage is Arneo, which is lamb. I want you to know, like thousands of years ago, when this word was initially used, it was used to describe a little lamb, a baby lamb, or a calf, ladies and gentlemen. But over time, decades, centuries, it lost the diminutive nature of the word little and just came to be referenced as lamb. But initially, it was a word to be used to describe a little lamb, a calf. And this is exactly what John is seeing. He's seeing America in its infancy, growing in power, growing in might and its influence. And now he says, and here are the key words, Kai Ilale, the two most important words in this text, Kai. The King James, I believe, does not do credit to the text because it translates it and. I don't believe that it is an and, it's a conjunction. And I believe what John was writing is that what is coming after the and is going to contrast that which went before the and. And I believe a better translation is, but although I saw it, it was in its infancy, it was growing in its power, and it was innocent, it was docile, but Ilale, Ilale is the word for speak. It's in the imperfect tense. It began to speak as a dragon. The significance of John putting it in the imperfect tense is this. John says that this action that this country is going to take, once it starts, it will never stop. John says it starts speaking like or as a dragon, and once it starts doing that, it will never stop. speaking like a dragon. It will never lose its dragon-like nature. That's the significance of this passage. Now, you can say what you want about Gulf War I during the administration of Bush 1. You can talk about weapons of mass destruction. Oh, there weren't any weapons of mass destruction. And you can talk about Gulf War II under Bush 2. But what I believe Christ is saying to John is, John, pay attention, because what you're going to see in this country, in this nation, which initially started out passive, gentle, caring for others, looking out for the well-being and the welfare of others all over the globe, a transition is going to take place. We're going to go from a gentle, lamb-like country to a country that speaks and acts and functions and behaves like a dragon. And once that transition begins, it will not end. We will never go back to what we were before. That's what Christ is trying to say to us in Revelation 13, verse 11. And here is my version. I want to put it on the screen. Here's my translation. Here's my translation for Revelation chapter 13. And I saw another beast rising up out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, but it was speaking like a dragon. So the prophecies that the United States, so the Bible prophesies that the United States will change, and it has. In the last 4 years, we've seen individuals, fathers and mothers, separated from their children. We've seen children caged. We've seen Muslim bans. We've seen all kinds of things that we've never seen before from our commander-in-chief. And please understand, an organization, an entity, even a country takes its lead from its leader. And many Americans are now acting out like their president. So America has transitioned. And this change will continue, especially if he is put back in office as a result of this election here today. But the change will not just be political, ladies and gentlemen. It in fact will be a religious sector. There will be a religious sector. The religious base, there will be, and there is a religious base of a political party that will drive the change towards tyranny, especially religious tyranny. I want you to hear second clip from Noam Chomsky. He references this. Listen to this clip.
Norman Ornstein, American Enterprise Institute, describes the Republican Party today as a radical insurgency that has abandoned parliamentary politics. Actually, you can see it in the last, ever since the Obama election. And Mitch McConnell and others made it very explicit right off that they have only one policy: ruin the country as much as possible, hope that people will blame it on the Democrats, and then maybe we can get power back again and we can follow our program of dedicating ourselves with utter servility to the needs of the very rich and the corporate sector. Well, now, of course, in order to gain votes, they can't say that. So what they've done is mobilize sectors of the population that have always been there, but have never really been politically mobilized, like evangelical Christians, nativists who are afraid that they are taking our country away from us.
So I'm going to, now, he specifically referenced evangelicals who have been mobilized. They've been mobilized. And they're using their, not only religious, but their political power to influence not just their base, but America through the appointment of Supreme Court judges and lower court judges all over America. They're not satisfied with just their policies affecting them. They believe that their policies should affect all Americans. And it is the evangelicals that have been mobilized to do this in this country. And Christ knew that a union was coming. that was going to do exactly that. He referenced it in Revelation 13. He even referenced it in Revelation 16, verse 13. And this text says this: I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. I want to draw attention to the words false prophet. That's a spiritual connotation, ladies and gentlemen, that is not political. Which party, Democrat or Republican, is dominated by a religious wing of their base? Which party refers to President 45 as the chosen one? Because they are convinced that he is the modern day fulfillment of Cyrus. They believe that 45 has a prophetic fulfillment. I posit to you that anyone who refers to President Donald Trump as God's chosen one to fulfill a prophetic fulfillment is truly a false prophet. I want to bring on my first guest. I've known him all my life. He is the CEO of the Father's Wish Foundation. He just happens to be my son, Damon Keith Leggett. Yes? Unmute. Can't hear you. There
yes,
we go.
sir. Yes, sir.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
If Donald Trump wins this election, finish the sentence. What does it mean?
It means that we have to have a plan in place still, but we need to be on offense and not on defense.
How will America be impacted and affected if he is granted a second term? Either it's quite possible that a president won't be declared tonight, but whenever a president is declared, if he's declared the winner, how will America be affected by a second term of Trump?
It's going to be more of the same, but it's going to be worse, because every time presidents get a second term, their first term is them trying to get a second term, but when they get the second term, it's all holds barred. So you're going to see no holds barred. You're going to see more of the same, but way worse. There's no barriers. There's no restriction. There's no, now you get to see the true Donald Trump, where may have been some apprehension about putting the pedal to the metal. Now it's going to be a lot more of the same.
So you're scaring me.
That's just the reality. We saw it with Reagan. We saw it with Bush 1. We saw it with Bush 2. And in my generation, Bush 1 came in and they did the whole war on drugs and all of that thing. He got in with the Willie Horton ads. So we were being targeted. For him to beat Michael Dukakis, he targeted us as criminals. Willie Horton ad was just about revolving door of criminals. Then they did the war on drugs thing. So, and then his second term, it was even worse. So we've been seeing this pattern.
Look, I gotta take a break. I'll bring you back. I need to take a break at this point, but before I do, I want to share a quote with you from Thomas L. Friedman. He wrote this quote in a New York Times opinion piece, and here's what he says: if we re-elect him, referring to President Donald Trump, knowing what a norm-destroying, divisive, corrupt liar he is, then the world will not treat the last 4 years as an aberration. It will treat them as an affirmation that we've changed. Mm-hmm. The world will not just look at America differently, but at Americans differently, and with good reason. When we return from this next break, my guest will be Congresswoman Madeleine Dean from the 4th District here in Pennsylvania. Stay with us. There's a lot more in the show. Don't go away.
145 over 92.
180 over 111.
182 over 100. And I had a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, and then a stroke.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life.
A lot of people don't understand, including myself. I didn't, now I do, the impact of having a stroke.
My memory is shot.
When I woke up, I couldn't speak.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
It's a tough journey.
Lowering your high blood pressure could save you from a heart attack or stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
It's a new life, but I'm gonna make it better. I'm coming back. Ask your doctor, check your blood pressure.
Hi, and welcome back. I am honored to bring on my next guest. She is a distinguished individual in my parts of the world. She is Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. She represents the 4th District here in Pennsylvania. That includes the majority of Montgomery County and the western portion of Berks County. She is my Congresswoman for me and my members. I am delighted to have her. Congresswoman Dean, thank you for being with us today.
Pastor Leggett, thank you for inviting me. I am delighted to join you on your program. I admire your work and your servant's heart and how you serve our community. So lucky me to be in conversation with you.
Amen. Amen. Well, look, I wanted to get someone who was up and close, someone in Washington who's part and parcel of the process, because here's the question. Now, I know you have your own election. And before I get to that, let me ask you, it's re-election time for you. How are things going?
Oh, thank you. It's going okay, but it's very strange during COVID. When you're trying to campaign, it's a very different world. We're doing almost no in-person events. We can't do the typical door knocking that I like because I'm a people person. I like to talk to people, find out what they care about. But we're doing as well as we possibly can. And I think that an awful lot of my campaigning is just doing my job. It's an honor and a privilege to serve in Congress, to serve Montgomery and Berks counties. And so I just keep doing my job and trying to help people, constituents with problems. And so thank you for asking about the campaign. Just a few days now, just a little more than 2 weeks now until the counting begins.
Absolutely. Well, as someone who has attended your meetings and watched you up close in person, someone who has sat at your feet, I know that we have been blessed these last 4 years to have you as our representative and our leader. And I know that we are going to go to the polls because 4 years, as it relates to Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, is just not enough. We want 4 more years.
Well, I only get 2. It's even worse.
Oh, wow. 2 years.
But
well,
you remember me from my State House days.
Yeah. We'll take whatever we can get. Look, I know your time is really precious. So I want to jump right in. Here's the question. November 3rd, we're going to go to the polls. Some people in some states have early in-person voting. Last I checked, it was about 9, almost 10 million people that have voted already. But in earnest, people are going to go to the polls either through a mail-in ballot or in person. And November 3rd, we have a choice. Joseph R. Biden Jr. from our state or Donald J. Trump. So here's the question is, if Donald Trump wins this 2020 election, finish the question. What happens?
Our nation will survive. But before I give over that premise, I want to say you're absolutely right. People are going to the polls right now. I just voted today. I was in Norristown today, and Josh Shapiro and I both put our ballots, mail-in ballots, in the box. He actually did an in-person early, and I had requested a mail-in. I don't know if you're feeling it, but the response to this election cycle, particularly in our county, has been so robust, so strong. I love that people are coming out to vote. Some people who haven't voted in the past or who voted once in a while. I think everybody knows his and her voice is so important. So the numbers, I think, will be staggering here in Montgomery County. In 2018, we had the highest voter participation of all 67 counties, Montgomery County. I think we're going to do that and then some. But to your question, and it is a critical question, and it keeps people anxious. What do we do? I think number one, on November 3rd, I hope everybody recognizes that number one, your vote is secure. And number two, we're not going to know the tally on the evening of the 3rd. We have to be patient. Our system is built for it. We've built in safeguards and guardrails to make sure that the fine men and women who are counting these votes will be able to do it, and we will document it. They will do it safely, protecting every single one of our votes. And it will take some period of time before we have the actual tally. If in the end, Pastor, to your question, if in the end, the results of this election fairly place President Donald J. Trump in a second term, we'll have to deal with it. And I hope that the work that I've had the chance to do in Congress will be able to continue. I hope in an even more robust way, that we uphold the precious Constitution and the rule of law. We can't take it for granted. But I would not be, I would be wrong to tell you that I wouldn't be concerned for our country, concerned for the protection of the rule of law, concerned for the protection of the marginalized, the other, which this president sadly has really tried to divide us on. So I think we're strong, we're built for it. But I think in these final days leading up to this election, if I get no other message out, it is that your vote matters. We need its highest participation and people informed as to these candidates. And the contrast could not be more stark.
Absolutely. It has come out within the last 2 months that the president had 18 conversations with, I believe, Bob Woodward, that he was preparing for his book. And in those conversations that were revealed to the public, it is now clear that the president knew that this was a deadly virus. He knew that it was airborne. He knew in February, and that he knew that lives were going to be lost from the oldest to the youngest.
Yes.
And yet the very next day he goes and he has a rally, and subsequent to that, he referred to the pandemic, to the coronavirus, as a hoax, something that was made up by the fake media or by the Democrats. And so it's clear to me, and this is subjective, that he did not take this thing seriously because he thought it was going to hurt the economy, which he was counting on being that which would cause him to get another second 4 years. So my question to you is, if he's granted another 4 years because he's reelected, what happens with the pandemic? What happens with how we deal with this deadly virus that has claimed 1 million people worldwide and 219,000 people in America? What do we do with this pandemic if he's given another 4 years based on what he's done this year with the pandemic?
Well, you know what, Pastor? You and I are in a similar line of work. I think pastors and public servants, the number one quality we should be looking for is somebody you can trust, somebody who will tell you the truth and help you deal with that truth, not somebody who hears the truth, knows people, their lives and their livelihoods are in grave danger, and he denies it. That is what is so, if you voted on no other reason whatsoever, you want to be able to trust the person who is at the helm. On the second hand, you also want somebody who's competent. If nothing else, even if you thought the president was fine on a lot of fronts, he's been incompetent. We have approaching 220,000 Americans dead, no end in sight. The daily infection rate is troublingly high and increasing as we head into the flu season. The economic recession is so harsh on so many families. And that's something I'm keenly focused on and wish that we could get more relief to my constituents, to people in America. But what will we do faced with if somehow Donald Trump fairly wins a second term? I hope in that case that our Congress, our Democratic majority in Congress, which is the most diverse Congress in our nation's history, with more women, more people of color, we have Native Americans, we have Muslim Americans, you name it, LGBTQ. We have the most diverse majority in Congress ever. I hope that is only strengthened, because you can see the difference in the legislating that took place, even in the face of this administration and its corruptions and obstructions. We, in the majority, in the House, passed powerful legislation, most of it bipartisan, and most of it dead in the Senate. So what I do hope is, if somehow Donald Trump is victorious, we have a different leadership in the Senate, so that the Senate actually will act independently of this president. So far, they have not exercised their right, their constitutional being as being an independent, co-equal branch of government. Instead, Mitch McConnell has abdicated his role and just said, well, if the president isn't interested in it, we won't be taking these things up for a vote. That's not the role of a co-equal branch of government. So I hope that that will be an important backstop, a change in leadership in the Senate and a more robust Democratic majority in the House.
So what happens if he's granted another 4 years? What happens to our democracy? What happens to our democratic institutions? What happens to the rule of law based on the previous 4 years, where he is time and time again, he has flouted the emoluments clause, which requires a sitting president that you must divest yourself if you have a business. And time again, he has enriched himself, and he has campaign violations, and he's done all of these things to flout the rule of law. What happens to our democracy and this country when he just cozies up to dictators around the world? What happens to our democracy that has been protected for 200 years? What happens to our democracy?
Yeah, that's actually the most critical question. What we have said often in this campaign is that our lives, our livelihoods, and the life of our democracy are at stake. I want to tell you a quick story. I had the real honor of serving with the late Elijah Cummings and the late John Lewis. And I one day, a year and a half ago now, sat on the floor of the U.S. House next to Representative Cummings, Chairman Cummings. And we had a really great conversation, Pastor, great conversation. Told me about his father being up in the gallery, watching him being sworn in, told me about his roots in Baltimore and his hardworking parents. And he said to me, Madeleine, you're here for a very short while. Make sure you make the most of it. This was July of last year, and it was a difficult year, 2019. And in the end, he said, you know what? 300 years from now, your ancestors will remember you were here. I didn't understand, Pastor, what he meant. And I laughed a little and I said, well, they'll certainly remember you were here, Chairman Cummings. I'm not so sure about me. But you know when it occurred to me what he meant? During impeachment. I had the solemn duty of sitting on the Judiciary Committee as we impeached the president. This president stands forever impeached, regardless of the Senate abdicating its role, failing to even call witnesses. This man stands forever impeached because of exactly what you're saying, the rule of law, not understanding or valuing our precious Constitution. And so that's what Cummings meant. He meant what we all do in this election cycle. Our ancestors will remember, did we protect our Constitution, the rule of law, our democracy, this republic, or did we take it for granted thinking it is always there? I worry desperately about the rule of law. Look who this president has put as the top law enforcement officer of our country. Attorney General Bill Barr, who has been nothing but a political puppet for the president. You talk about the emoluments clause. I have thought that from day one. I thought that surely would be his undoing. Doesn't divest himself, enriches himself, foreign countries stay at his hotels for his personal profit and gain, and he goes unchecked in that. That can't continue. So I hope if this nightmare scenario you've thought of comes forward, we will have a Congress that will hold him to account and will get rid of an Attorney General Barr who does not see himself as an independent lawmaker or law-abiding officer, but instead, one of the most egregious things that I saw him participate in was the clearing of protesters in Lafayette Square. You saw that. He used forces, armed forces, to clear protesters. Didn't we think we'd gotten away from that maybe in the 60s in civil rights?
Absolutely.
Think of John Lewis when police beat him nearly to death. And yet we saw that in 2020 in Lafayette Square, headed by, directed by the Attorney General of the United States for a political picture, a photo op with a borrowed Bible in front of St. John's Church. I worry a lot about the rule of law under this president. He cares nothing for it.
That leads me, Congresswoman, to this next question, because we all read and learned with horror that Governor Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan was targeted. And I just discovered, and I'm sure you knew this long before I did, that Governor Northam from Virginia was also on their radar with these white nationalists and this group who had decided, you know what, we don't like their politics. We don't like the fact that they haven't opened up the state of Michigan and or Virginia, and was going to kidnap and or kill them. My question is, if our president, who just sent a message during the debate to white nationalists to stand back but stand by, what happens? What happens if he is given 4 more years? What happens with these white nationalist groups like the Boogaloo Boys and the KKK? What happens to systemic racism and all of this hatred that is now come to the forefront as a result of his presidency? What happens?
Oh, you're giving me nightmares. But it's the truth. Take a look at the statements by this president and the vice president. Neither one of them condemning white supremacy, white nationalism, domestic terrorism. When you have a militia group who is planning, they had to FBI infiltrate and thwart the plan to kidnap, to try a non-judicial made-up military to try a sitting governor and potentially execute her. What did the president do when that was revealed? Nothing. Nothing. You know what Joe Biden did? He picked up the phone and called her and said, "How are you? How is your family? I'm worried for you." Our president couldn't show national leadership. He couldn't show personal leadership. It is doggone frightening. And here we are just a few days out from the election, and you're right, sending sort of those dog whistles, stand by and stand down and stand by. I pray, Pastor, I hope you don't mind. I pray
Absolutely.
that America sees what's at stake.
Yeah.
And it's not just this president, it's who he has surrounded himself with. He is the most indecent man. In that same 48-hour period, of course, this is a president who contracted COVID, who had super spreader events, who, because of his own vanity, refused to model the importance of a mask, refused to help save lives. And then, you know, when he got COVID, do you remember who he blamed last week? He said he thought he maybe got it from the Gold Star families.
No, right?
It's the indecency knows no bottom. There's just no, this well is so deep of his indecency. So we can't let that continue. If somehow he wins re-election, our government, the houses of Congress, our judiciary system will have to be full throttle doing the right thing, the ethical thing, constraining this president and removing him from office.
In the last couple of minutes that we have, my concern is that, Congresswoman, we have passed the Affordable Care Act. And from day one, this president has been dead set on eliminating it. And he keeps saying he has a plan, he's got a plan, he's got a plan, and no plan ever comes to replace it. Yeah. And so if he's granted 4 more years, what happens to the Affordable Care Act? What happens to the Obamacare plan that has given health care to millions of Americans who did not have it before? What happens?
Well, you see, he's working in the Senate right now to seat a new justice in these waning days of his first term for that very purpose, so that she will be seated on the Supreme Court when the November 10th argument takes place on the Affordable Care Act. Again, think of the inhumanity of this. We're in the midst of a pandemic. As you point out, for 4 years, he's been talking about tearing down the ACA and replacing it. Well, hasn't he assembled the best minds to figure out how to replace it? Not a single plan. If somehow this president is successful in having the Affordable Care Act repealed or found unconstitutional by way of his packed Supreme Court, the good news is we have a Congress, and Congress passed the Affordable Care Act in the past. We will do it again. I bet we will do it even more robustly. We'll get it done. We'll protect the American people. The backlash of millions of people not having health coverage, affordable health coverage. We don't have everybody covered now. What any public servant ought to be doing is saying, how do I get to universal coverage? How do I expand the public option? How do I make this affordable and automatic for everyone? How do I do that? Not tear it down. Say that pre-existing conditions. Now, folks who have had COVID, that's a pre-existing condition. That won't be protected. Your young people who are on your policy till they're 26, done. Women's rights, healthcare rights, privacy rights could all be stripped away. And so I believe that Congress will act really swiftly and robustly against such a measure. But again, I'm going to continue to keep my prayers going and my faith in the American people that they have seen the destruction on every level by this administration. You mentioned the different institutions, the different agencies. He's defunded them. He's demoralized them. He's stripped them of their integrity, even though we have many public servants who are in this not for politics, but in it to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
So,
Congresswoman, look, this has been a great privilege. I'm sorry I am out of time, but I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experience, your knowledge and your information with us that we would not have had otherwise, because you are all on the inside. Thank you. I wish you all the best to both you, your family. Tell Lexi and your team, you have a great team. Tell them I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you very much. And I know our common friend Val says hello to you. I get to work with her every day. Thank you very much. And you know me, Pastor. I prefer you call me Mad or Madeline. So tell your viewers that also.
Thank you much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day. Stay well.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Hi, and welcome back.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner!
Go. Excellent. Yeah, I saw you guys out there.
Campaign, and it was up today for re-election. Trust that all went well with her campaign. And so I had the opportunity of interviewing her because she was so busy, and I had to interview her at least like 2 weeks ago. So we had a chance to sit down together and put that interview together. Before I go and introduce my next guest, I want to share with you a quote. This is another quote from Thomas L. Friedman, writer with the New York Times. He did an opinion piece. He said, "There is no escaping it. America is on the ballot on Tuesday." That's today. The stability and quality of our governing institutions, our alliances, how we treat one another, our basic commitment to scientific principles, and the minimum decency that we expect from our leaders, the whole ball of wax is on the ballot today. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are voting for. It is not just for one man versus another. It is not just one political party versus another. It's not just one administration versus another. It is about the American way of life as we've known it. And we've been blessed all of our lives to live in a land of freedom, in a country that guarantees our rights and freedoms. We absolutely have been blessed. That is what is on the ballot. And joining me now is Pastor William Taliaferro. He is the pastor of the West Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church. He is also a longtime, one of the most popular radio talk show hosts in the city of Philadelphia. He is uniquely gifted. He is multi-gifted. It is a privilege to have him on the show right now. Pastor Taliaferro, it is a blessing to have you. You are muted. We need to hear. There we go. We need to hear. We need to hear that radio voice. We need to hear that radio voice.
And unfortunately, you see the radio face. I mean, they kind of come together. Unfortunately, it's been an interesting day.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you know what I'd like you to do? I'd like you to just talk to us a little bit. You, because of your position, God has uniquely blessed you. You know, you're affiliated with a lot of individuals in Philadelphia because of your personality, because of your talents and gifts as one of the most incredible speakers that I have ever heard in my life. And because of your position as a talk show host, you have been uniquely connected with a lot of people. And I know you've been on the ground. You've done a lot of things leading up to this election. What was today like? I know you were out and about. What was the mood like? Talk to me about what you saw, what you felt, what you heard, what you experienced today.
First of all, the turnout was abnormally robust. I mean, we had my program, tonight's program. I was working with Congressman Evans, and they were talking about 80% turnout at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at certain wards. 80% at 2 o'clock, 60% in other wards. So more than half of the turnout of the expected people were already voted, and the real voting typically takes place after 4 o'clock. Vice President Biden stopped by. We were having a rally. He stopped by there. It is Pennsylvania, of course, is ground level. You know, it's ground zero for this thing, and so he is really putting in the time. And what we got reports from all around. What we're seeing is a very vigorous turnout on the part of individuals in the state of Pennsylvania, and currently, from what we can tell, the numbers suggest that Pennsylvania is going 77% for Biden currently. Wow. But that's only with about 20% of the vote in, and so but it looks really good. It looks really good.
So what is your projection as you're a man about town. You have your finger on the pulse. You were literally out there today talking with people, mingling with people. What's the mood? What's the feeling?
The feeling is, I mean, this is how one person said it, that President Trump is the president by the margin of Black voter apathy. He won Pennsylvania. He won 3 states by 77,000 votes. 42,000 of those votes coming from Pennsylvania. 12.9% of all Pennsylvania votes come out of Philadelphia. A lion's share of those Democratic votes are African American, and people simply stayed home last time. But this time, what you have is this robust outpouring of people saying, "Not on my watch. I'm going to make my voice heard." So that's going to change Pennsylvania. Now, when you get to Florida, where you have this strange amalgam of, there's this thing called the Latino vote, which doesn't exist, because Latinos that's not an ethnicity. It just tells you what language someone grew up speaking. Latinos are white, they're Black, they're in between, they're Asian. I mean, and so that's, it's a weird measurement, but Florida is strange. Georgia is tight right now. The Carolinas are both in play. And so as it stands right now, what I project is a solid victory for Joe Biden, winning Pennsylvania, winning Michigan, and I think he's going to win North Carolina.
Well, if you are a prophet and or a son of a prophet.
I've been called son of things before, and
that's not where I was going, preacher. That's not where I was going. If that is the case, there is no path to 270 for Donald Trump.
He's got to win Pennsylvania. He's got to win Florida. As it stands right now, the last numbers we got showed that he was trailing in Texas. He's not going to win California. And so if he loses Texas and he loses Pennsylvania, then he's got a hard path to get to 270. But here's the thing. Donald Trump doesn't want to be president. Donald Trump just doesn't want to lose. I mean, his narcissism cannot accept the fact that people would say to him, "You're not good enough." I mean, but the last thing he wants to do is to wake up and have to be president again. He doesn't like being president now. He likes being adored and he likes being worshiped, but he doesn't like the responsibility of being the head of state.
If he loses, will he leave? Willingly?
Yeah, he'll leave because he's, excuse the expression. There's a word for it, a theological word for Donald. He's a punk. And that's why he'll leave. I mean, he's all bluster. He's all hat and no cattle. I mean, he's going to talk about it, and he'll try to get his people up. Now, he'll let them lay down in front of tractors and tanks and all that. But Donald Trump, it has no skin in the game anywhere. Ask any of his ex-wives. 20 years ago, I met his ex-wife, Marla Maples, up in Chestnut Hill. And we had a long conversation about Donald Trump, long before he was even thinking about being president. But I met her in Chestnut Hill, and you know, the man is a feckless, reprehensible reflection of failed humanity. On his good days, on his bad days, it just goes without speaking. So,
that's a good day.
Those are his good days. You know, those are his good days. You know.
All right, look. Suppose we're all wrong. Pastor, suppose we're all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because we thought, look, I would tell you that 4 years ago, I did not watch the returns 4 years ago. I knew that America could not be dumb enough.
Yeah.
I knew that America could not be dumb enough to vote a non-politician, a failed businessman. He was a joke in New York. Everyone in New York knew he was a joke.
True.
Banks in New York would not loan money to him because he had filed for bankruptcy 6 times.
Yeah.
And only people who bought the lie, you know what Donald Trump is? Donald Trump is Frank Abagnale.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Frank Abagnale, the biggest con man in American history until Donald Trump.
Yes, no question.
So 4 years ago, I don't watch any of the returns. And I wake up, I get up the next morning. First thing I do, I have my devotion bright and early before anybody else gets up. And I said, well, let me see the margin by which Hillary
won. Yeah.
And when I saw that she lost and he won, I went,
yeah, I remember.
Could not believe it. I went into a depression. So what if we're wrong? What if Donald Trump, Pastor, wins this election?
I think your son and your previous guest had it right. You know, I mean, we'll survive, but we'll have to dig in. We'll have to prepare for some things. Donald Trump is, he is. We have not seen his ilk in this country in the past. Germany has seen his ilk, but we have not seen it. And if he should win, what's going to happen is that there's going to be an all-out culture war. I'm hoping that it will not evolve to a physical war, because race is secondary to Donald Trump. Class is primary to Donald Trump, but he uses race to accomplish his ends. But people are tired. I mean, you heard about that black organization where they're carrying guns and rifles, and they have a very strongly worded title for their group. Now, I think it's called the We're Not Messing Around group, and that's not what they said. And they're carrying guns around like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys, which the worst thing that can happen in a culture is when people begin to take on the tactics of their enemies. The folks that I hate, I begin to act like them because I figure that's how I win. And that is what's starting to happen now in our country. So we'll see the unraveling of the better parts of American culture. We'll become threadbare in those places where morality should be keeping us, and the country will continue to erode and become lean closer toward amorality, and then, you know, that's when we get biblical. It's like somebody said, you know, every day I look out the window to see what chapter of Revelation we're living through today, and I think that's where we're headed.
Well, look, I want to thank you for your time, because I know you have another appointment to get to, right?
Hey, look, I appreciate. There's one more. You won't believe it, but there's another political Zoom gathering in Philadelphia tonight, and people are really there. They're ginned up about this thing, man. I'm telling you, it's something. And so, it's been a pleasure, Frank.
Yeah, this is so. Look, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on. And I just want to thank you for your time. I know how incredibly busy, how connected and how busy you are. And so I just want to thank you for your time. Appreciate you. Love
I
you,
hang
man.
around because I want to hear what Steve says. You and I, you said, what happened if we're wrong? You and I might be wrong. Steve Richardson is never wrong. So I'm going to find out what he's going to say. So.
Look, but before we go to commercial, before we take this break, I want to share a quote with you from a Brit from Great Britain. Here's what he has to say about an hour, about 45. He says, for instance, he has no class, no charm, no coolness, no credibility, no compassion, no wit, no warmth, no wisdom. He has no subtlety. He has no sensitivity. He has no self-awareness, no humility, no honor, and no grace. All qualities, funnily enough, with which his predecessor, Mr. Obama, was generously blessed. So for us, the stark contrast does rather throw Trump's limitations into embarrassingly sharp relief. Now, Pastor, if Trump ever read this quote, he would have a heart attack because he hates the ground that Obama walks on. He is in constant competition with Barack Obama.
He is. And Barack Obama has the indignity and the nerve to be black as well.
Absolutely. And to be incredibly intelligent and articulate, all of which Donald Trump is not.
None of
So absolutely. We thank you. We're going to take a break now, but we've got lots more. So stick with us and stay with us. We'll be right back right after this commercial break. Don't go away.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs. And that's still not enough to put food on the table. I am a 16-year-old boy who just got my first job to help feed my little sisters. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew they were hungry.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
And returning is Damon Keith Leggett, the founder and the CEO of the Father's Wish Foundation. Pastor Richardson, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. And Damon, thank you for staying around with us. Pastor Richardson, here's the question. If Donald Trump wins the 2020 election, he wins this election, whether it be tonight, this week, next couple of weeks, what happens to America?
Well, I think that we will get a true assessment of the genuine state of America's soul. All right. I think along with many others in 2016, was not only surprised by the results, but it caused me to recalibrate my estimation of the United States, of my country, because I sincerely thought that up to that particular point, America had always kind of while it may have been caught up in certain emotions, when the time it came to election, it kind of settled down and did what was pragmatic. 2016 taught us, I think, a few things as to the potential of this country kind of sliding back to where we thought we had progressed beyond, particularly in light of Obama's presidency. But should Donald Trump win a second term, then it stands to reason that none of us should have well, let's put it, I'll just put it this way. We will have an unvarnished idea, an unvarnished view of where America's soul truly is, not just for ourselves, but also the world. I think that becomes very, very clear. So there's a lot that's riding on this. Of course, the world itself are not just our allies, but also the foes of the United States are also looking with keen interest just to kind of see where the American public is. But there's definitely been a shift, I think, in the general population. And unfortunately, whichever candidate wins this election, the losing party will not view the result as incontrovertible. We've become so polarized now, and I think that's one of the unfortunate side effects of the presidency, of the current presidency of the Trump administration, that we are seeing the rupture of relationships. I mean, I've had conversations with friends and strangers alike, where their friends are no longer friends, where even family members are no longer talking to one another because the emotions have run so deep on this thing, which in itself, I think, tells us a little bit in terms of where we are, because we're such polar opposites now that usually where we would say, well, whatever happens, the nation's going to come together as it always has. It's going to unify and we'll be fine. Can't say that. Can't say that anymore. So it is a time of high anxiety. And frankly, my honest assessment is the first 4 years of the Trump presidency revealed that he is a man whose authority and presidential power he believes to be unassailable. And he believes his actions to be unaccountable. And unfortunately, and I'm talking here now from a Christian viewpoint, those who are Christian who do in fact support Donald Trump have abdicated their responsibility, at least to keep the man accountable, because there are certain biblical principles that regardless of where you fall in the political spectrum, those principles, those biblical principles stand firm. And as a Christian, and particularly a Christian leader, your responsibility, as a matter of fact, if you support a political candidate, then your responsibility to that candidate is to ensure that they hew the line. All right. You are appointed, if anything, like a watchman, or to kind of update the analogy, a guard dog. And if you're a guard dog who remains mute, if you no longer bark as a warning, then what good are you? And unfortunately, I think the Christian church has been irreparably harmed, at least for the next 1 or 2 generations, because of this unqualified support of a president who, if you don't want to call him immoral, he's at least amoral. All right. No principles really matter to him. It's just if the end justifies the means. And unfortunately, for much of at least evangelical Christianity, I'm afraid the same can be true. The usual tack of the Republican Party, which is always extolling matters of character and dignity,
family values,
behavior. Yes, I mean all that's out the window. I mean it's seen. I mean if you try that now, it'll be seen as so hypocritical. That's not even funny. So
now you referenced the Christian church. Does that also apply to the Adventist church?
Well, Adventists are Christians, so yeah, it definitely applies. I mean, for those who are not familiar with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, in many respects, we live in 2 worlds. There is very strong Republican support with many of our white brothers and sisters, whereas in the African American community, there is very strong Democratic support. And without digging in too deep, but yeah, you will see a variety of emotions regardless of the results as they are reported later on in the week. There will be mourning and rejoicing. It's just a matter of which camp will do the mourning and which camp will do the rejoicing.
If Trump wins this election, Pastor, what are the prophetic and the spiritual ramifications for God's people as a result?
Well, I try to be as measured as I can with the political turnout. As Adventists, we have a very strong foundation in biblical prophecy, and our expectation, honestly, of governments to a large extent have to be somewhat muted. By that I mean, as well or solid a history as the United States has, we have often said that we foresee a time coming when principles of liberty of conscience and the intentional principles as are found in the Constitution will at some point be set aside, and that there will be a joining of church and state, which historically has been to sinister ends historically. All right. And so we see this coming sooner or later. And at the same time, also our understanding of biblical prophecy, particularly as we see in Revelation and also in Matthew 24, is that these things are also necessary. Now, so that we maintain an equilibrium through all of this, ultimately we understand that God is still in control. All right. And so despite whatever man seeks to do, we know what the end of the story is, because in the end, God comes, he intervenes, and he ensures that his kingdom and his people are victorious. And so through all of this, and that's not to say we get complacent. And before anyone tries to make that mistake, I'm not speaking about some pie in the sky, bye. Don't be bothered. It shouldn't matter. It matters. Let's understand something. There will be immediate consequences based on the results of this election. Let's be clear about that. All right. But
Damon, what do you think? Go ahead, Steve. Finish that statement. But in
the end, there has always has to be a Christian calm from the understanding that we still rest within the hand of God, and that ultimately God's plan is going to come to pass. All right.
Amen. Yes, how should we respond? How should we as the people of God, Damon, we focus heavily on end time prophecies. From the time we walked into the Adventist church, we've studied Revelation 13. We've learned about the two beasts in Revelation 13. We've learned about those beasts in Daniel chapter 7. We know that those chapters, those two books are Siamese. They are conjoined twins. How do we respond as a people and we know, and you alluded to it earlier, and you were spot on, that during the first term of a presidency, the president who desires to have a second term will kind of watch his P's and Q's, be on his P's and Q's. But that's in that second term, to use your words, there's no holds barred.
Right.
Knowing that that's coming, especially with this guy, how do we as a people of God prepare ourselves? What does it mean? Does it mean that the coming of Christ is sooner rather than later? Does it mean that God is somehow going to course correct? What does it mean for us? How do we respond to this? We've never been here before. How do we respond?
Okay, so
what is your demographic thinking?
Let me tell you exactly what my demographic is thinking, and let me tell you what I'm telling my demographic. Okay, so first of all, they are playing in our backyard because they are now for the first time trying to use the word of God, right? For the first time, you have presidential candidates, you have political party who is leading biblically. So I don't understand why when we have Bible passages like Deuteronomy 28 that say you will be the head and not the tail. You will lend and not borrow. I don't understand why we are always following. This is our wheelhouse, right? When I was young, you used to talk about a principle of repetition and enlargement. The principle of repetition and enlargement is anything that happens on the local level will be repeated again before the close of Earth's history on a global scale. Paul said it too. He said the events when they went from Egypt to Canaan. All right, these are examples for those on whom the final ages are come. Right.
1 Corinthians 10.
Right. So I don't understand why, if they are in our wheelhouse, we know how it's all going to happen. We know the signs of the times. Then the word of God says, surely the Lord God will do nothing save he reveal his will to his servants. Not the false, not 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. No, to his servants, the prophet, right? So I just been going to Revelation 7. Says God said, hold back the 4 winds of strife until I seal my children, right? So this is what I was saying when I said we supposed to be on offense right now, right? Because we know that prior to second coming, there's a period where he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. But before that, we know there's a period where
he froze. I hope he comes back. But he was on the road, Pastor.
Yeah, definitely so.
But the devil does not want us to get this word out, but he was in Revelation 7.
Generation is seeking. My generation is seeking. All right. The Hebrew Israelites and all of them, they having a field day because our generation is seeking. They coming on this with all of this Black Lives Matter and all of these groups are coming up, and our people are taking Bible studies. But Adventist, this is what I'm gonna tell you what I feel the Adventist problem is. So when an octopus is being attacked, the octopus will put its limbs out there, right? Because his limbs can regenerate. And there's 3 components of the beast. It's the forehead, it's the hands, and then Satan drew 1/3 of the stars with his tail. So Satan puts other targets out here for us to go at and fight with. And God said we're supposed to crush the head of the snake, right? So we feel like the Nation of Islam is winning in our community right now. They flocking to Minister Farrakhan because it's identity. It's all of this identity stuff going on, and because they have been in the game connecting to our people, now they're able to go and it's not even sound doctrine, but we have sound doctrine.
So what should we do? What should we do as the people of God? If he wins, how do we prepare ourselves?
We should be, just like Ice Cube said, we got to have a plan. What's in it for us? We should have the biblical plan based off the last 8 books of the Great Controversy. We should have the spiritual, the financial. That's why we call the Father's Wish Foundation, right? He said, beloved, I wish. It's 4 components of that. Beloved, that's, to me, that's the family. The covenant that we always talk about. Beloved, I wish above all things that you prosper financially, be in health. We got the health message. Okay. Even as your soul spiritually prospers. These is four components.
Okay.
The covenant, our finances. He said, occupy till I come. Right? So we should be having, we talk all the time about a good man leaving wealth to his children's children. That is the covenant. That's the birthright. That's the, you know what I'm saying? So we should be going to our people, showing them how to clean house like David cleaned house, to get Saul out of there and get the people prepared to receive the Holy Ghost in the sanctuary when he gave a blueprint to his son to build it. We're supposed to be taking our children through the process of, there's a period. We could treat Donald Trump's administration as Saul. And we could take the steps that David took to take the people from out of pocket. Saul had banished the Ark of the Covenant of God. He had put it out of Israel. He was ruling Israel, and the Philistines had taken control of the symbol of God's union with his. First thing David did was renew the covenant of God with the people so that God's blessings could be on them. And he erased all of those things. That's what we need to do with the Trump administration. I'm taking my people back to David. I'm taking my people back to how to renew and how to clean house. Nehemiah did it when he went to Babylon, and then he came back and they had brought the people in. They had set up market on the Sabbath, and they had brought the wares into the sanctuary. Nehemiah 13, he came back, he cleaned house, Pops. He burned the sanctuary where they had brought the filthy stuff. We need to go through our biblical principles that line up with this time that we're in, and we need to take the people through those processes to get the family clean, get the family back in covenant, get the family back on the financial. This is what Passover was, cleaning house. You know what I'm saying? So that's us being on offense.
Pastor, make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what Damon is actually talking about is self-determination. I think it's become abundantly clear that particularly in the Black community, we need to kind of lower expectations as to what we're going to receive from the government, particularly this government.
Absolutely.
And should a second term be granted to Donald Trump, then it raises our responsibility to watch out for one another.
Yes. Because
we are going to bear the brunt of the downside of an economy that's crippled, of a disease which, you know, our health situation is fragile. We're much more susceptible to the ravages of COVID than any other population group in the United States. Well, maybe save for the Native Americans, perhaps. But the point is that there are certain things that we're going to have to really take hold of. And of course, I think in which we're well positioned, particularly in terms of the amount of people resources that we have. We need to have a family conversation, honestly. All right. And kind of regroup and resettle. And as Damon puts out, put a strategy in place. And in all honesty, who is to say? I mean, even if there is a reprieve and Biden is elected, I mean, who is to say that we will, quote unquote, return to normal? We don't know that. I think there's some valuable lessons based on the current crisis that points to certain vulnerabilities within our community that we need to begin to address much more effectively. All right. And that's, as Damon says, matters of finance, matters of education, matters of health, matters of leadership, strategic planning. All of that has kind of gone begging. And we need to start looking inward and among us for some answers to these particular problems and do a better job, I think, of allying ourselves one with another, of pooling our resources as a community and begin to address these concerns. Because you know and I know what lies ahead, regardless of who gets elected. What's lying ahead, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be months of pain and hardship. The economy has been put into shock. There are thousands of jobs that are not coming back because they're dependent upon an economy fully rebounding, the travel industry, the service industry, and the like. So there are going to be, the food lines are just going off the chain right about now. I mean, there's some clear things that are happening, and God help us when the evictions begin to start in winter. You know, there are certain things I think we need to begin to anticipate because there's some troublesome times ahead that we need to make sure that we're positioning ourselves and pooling our resources in order to address.
Here's the question. We would like to be able to truly impact the African-American community. Ice Cube has a plan for Black America. He is now communicating with Donald Trump. 50 Cent said he is endorsing Donald Trump. Lil Wayne came out within the last week, said he is endorsing Donald Trump. The question that I ask, Damon, I'm going to first start with you and then conclude with Pastor Richardson, is, and Trump is meeting and dialoguing, and I just read something today where Cube said that Trump adjusted his platinum plan after reading his plan for Black America. The question that everybody needs to ask and answer is, can Trump be trusted, or is this merely window dressing? Like when he calls all of the presidents of the HBCUs within the first couple of months of getting elected, and then did nothing for them. Like a couple of days after being elected, he met at Trump Tower with Steve Harvey and Jim Brown. Nothing happened. My question is, can he be trusted, or is he desperate and meeting with Ice Cube and whomever to send a message to Black America that, look, I'm going to do this, I'm going to jump on this bandwagon, but as soon as I'm elected, it's just going to be trash that's thrown out. Pastor, can he be trusted?
I think his past record speaks for itself on that. As one of my friends observed, you mentioned the HBCU invitations to the presidents to come to the Oval Office. And as one of my friends pithily observed, they thought they were being invited to the table, but they wound up on the menu. One thing that I've learned about the current president is that he does what he believes is immediately necessary to gain the desired results. Now, I might be surprised, but my expectation is once he regains office, or should he regain office, more accurately stated, should he regain office, then the need to reach out and to connect with the community that he knows is at least 85 to 90% not in his corner, no matter what he does, then there's no more need to placate that particular community. Everything he has done to this particular point has been a calculation, all right? To project an image and to ensure that, as Pastor Telefero mentioned before, that he doesn't lose. Because it's a zero-sum game, ladies and gentlemen. It's either I win or I lose, all right? Now, in terms of how far ahead he's gonna look as far as a legacy is concerned, well, I don't know. I mean, I know Supreme Court and the justice system is likely one area in which they will constantly point. But I would not, my expectations, if Donald Trump is reelected, would not be that optimistic at all. I think pragmatically speaking, I don't see anything in his character or his past that would lend me to think that was a likelihood.
Damon, same question. And finally.
All right. You have to
you got a minute, Dad.
All right, you have to understand that Donald Trump and Lil Wayne and 50 Cent and all of them are basically controlled by the same people. Okay, Donald Trump had Michael Cohen as his attorney. 50 Cent and all of them are signed to Lawyer Cohen and Rick Rubin. You understand? So all of that is posturing. Okay, so that means nothing in our community. 50 Cent, all of them, they aren't relevant, right? So they see this political opportunity as a time to become relevant again. That's all posturing. It's all posturing. All right. So we have to understand that the inequality gap allows the Europeans to go out here and protest and all of that. We don't have that. We don't have that ability. They have investments in stock markets. They have even the average white person, the inequality gap they have. It says, there's a documentary, the Wealth Gap, says that the average white person has something like $78,000 of disposable income. So while they can come out with their $78,000 nest egg, our people have none of that. And so when our people go into the hard times that they're going to go into, there's no recovery for that. They can still go back and they can pull in a 401k. They could sell off some stock and all of that. That's what our people aren't understanding. They can go out and stand in the streets. We can't. We have to have a plan and we have to execute because our people haven't prepared financially. So that needs to be the message in our community.
Amen. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank both of you for coming on, spending your time with us on this election night. And I will allow you to get back to your families and do all that you do, check on the returns, etc. But I've saved the best for last. And now this last segment is entitled DJ's Corner. And DJ's Corner. And I'm proud to introduce to you an individual who is from a different generation than any of us have been on the screen tonight. I believe he is the ultimate authority on all things political and all things medical, even though once you look at him, you might not be of that opinion initially. And so I want to share with you my next guest. Is he there, Des? You're muted.
He's coming right now.
Okay.
And he took a poll on this earlier today too. So
okay, so he's gonna be ready.
Yeah.
He is going to be ready. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you my youngest grandchild. He is the 7th of 7 grandchildren of Angela and Frank Leggett. He is Damon DJ Leggett. DJ stands for Damon Jr. And so, DJ?
Yes.
How you doing?
Good.
You doing good?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to tell me, who you think should be our next president, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Joe Biden.
Why?
Speak up.
Because Donald Trump isn't doing a good job in serving the country.
In what way, in what area do you think he's not doing a good job? Be specific.
Well, so Donald Trump, he's not doing a lot of stuff to help destroy Corona or beat it. He's not really putting an effort in trying to stop Corona.
Do you think he should wear masks?
Yes.
Does he wear a mask?
I don't think so, no.
Do you wear a mask?
Yes.
Why?
Because so I don't catch Corona and die.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good reason to wear a mask. Should his people wear a mask?
Yes.
What do you think happens when you don't wear one?
Well, you could probably get a case of Corona and then die.
Did you vote today?
No.
Why not?
Because I can't. You have to be 18 or older to vote.
Aren't you 18?
No, I'm 8. I'm about to turn 9.
So you didn't vote?
No.
Didn't y'all vote in your class?
Oh, yeah. We did. So at the end of class, the teacher, she put up some election vote thingy, and 77% voted for Joe Biden and 33% voted for Donald Trump.
And you voted for Trump?
No, I voted for Joe Biden. And nobody voted for the other people because nobody else knew the other people.
Okay. Well, I'm just checking on you. Well, look, grandson, I want to thank you for spending this time with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you. Love you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and And thank you for having some clothes on. Thank you for having some clothes on tonight. I appreciate you.
That's what took you so long. That's what took you so long. Hey, don't forget about the question that you asked about Ben Carson. You have to touch on that comment that Ben Carson made. You didn't forget about that.
I don't remember. I don't know if we had a conversation. I mean, I don't remember that.
You sent me a clip that Ben Carson said he doesn't understand how any Adventism.
That's next Saturday night. That's next Saturday night.
Okay. All right.
Let's stay on this program. Stay on this program right here.
I'm sorry.
Stay right here. Don't take me.
I got ahead of myself, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this program tonight, I want to thank you for being with us. But here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to conclude with this. I want to put up one more text. It's my translation of Revelation 13, verse 11. I want to put that back on the screen again, and I'll walk you through this because I want to make the point. The text says, and I saw another beast rising up out of the earth, and it had two horns like a lamb, like a baby lamb, like a calf, but it was speaking like a dragon. Ladies and gentlemen, we've turned a corner. And at some point, no matter who we put into the White House, America ultimately is going to continue to speak like a dragon because Jesus is soon to come. And we must understand that. We do not have a savior in the White House. Our savior is in that house in the heavens. All right? He's not Democrat, Republican, or independent. We have no human savior but Christ. All right? Now, next Saturday night, my son alluded to it, next Saturday night, we are going to have our post-election night special. Next Saturday night, this coming Saturday night, November 7th at 7 p.m., you will be able to access the show, the stream via my Facebook page, facebook.com/frank.e.leggett, and quite possibly my YouTube page at youtube.com/fleggett. And so here's what we're going to do Saturday night, 7 p.m., post-election night special. We're going to have a greater idea as to where we are in this election process. If a president has been elected, it's been declared or not, at least we'll have a greater understanding. Here's what we're going to do. There are two schools of thought in the Adventist church as it relates to the voting process. There's one school of thought that says Adventists should never vote under any circumstances, for any reason, for any purpose. And then there's the other school of thought that says, yes, we should. So we're going to talk about, well, I'm going to raise the question, should Seventh-day Adventists vote? The second question I'm going to raise is this. Should Seventh-day Adventists be affiliated, and should we identify ourselves with a political party? Should we identify ourselves as Democrats, Republicans, independents? And then part and parcel of that dialogue, I'm going to share an email that was sent out that created a firestorm back in February before the pandemic hit. Danny Shelton from 3ABN made some comments about African Americans in general and African American Seventh-day Adventists. I believe he referenced them in this email that he sent out. Created a firestorm. So much, he got so much negative response to it, he took it down, but not before I received it. I reached out to him. I invited him to do a show with me, just he and I, to talk about these issues. He responded to my email and said, give me your demographic. I explained what my demographic was and who my target audience was, and ultimately who it was going to be. I'm going to share all of that dialogue with you. And we're going to have a conversation. And part and parcel of that conversation was Danny's comments about his visit to Oakwood University and what he saw and what he think he saw. We have to have that dialogue next Saturday night at 7 p.m. on one of the platforms that I mentioned. And then finally in that broadcast next Saturday night at 7 p.m., I'm going to open the chat room, and going to invite you to submit your questions about anything that we've discussed in that broadcast. Again, this coming Saturday night, post-election night town hall meeting, 7 p.m. on one of the platforms that I mentioned. Facebook, my personal Facebook page, or my YouTube page. I want to thank my guests, my son, Damon Keith Leggett. I want to thank Congresswoman Madeleine Dean from the 4th District here in Pennsylvania, Pastor William Nick Talaferro, pastor of the West Philadelphia Church, Pastor Stephen Andrew Lincoln Richardson. Pastor, you did not think I was going to end this broadcast without your full and complete I know you didn't make that mistake. So now, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, a couple of things. One, in the pandemic world in which we live, be safe, be smart, be respectful of other people's lives so that you protect your life and theirs. And number 4, live to see another day. And so until next Saturday night at 7 p.m., be blessed. I'll see you next week. Good night.